Hi, everyone, and thank you for being with us here today. This is our second in-person and online event since the whole pandemic. So it's really great to see you guys coming out, and we really missed the networking. We're just networking right now, and it just felt really nice to get people back together and seeing each other face to face. So today, we are going to be having a talk on design-led marketing. And before we get into that, I just wanted to quickly introduce the team behind HCD. The Human-Centered Design Meetup group is completely done for the community. We try to have these events regularly. We're trying for once a month to have these events, and we're always looking for great speakers, people in the community that want to share some of the great work that they're doing. So please do come out and speak to any one of us. Jonathan and myself are here today, and we have Greta and Essa joining us online to help put this meetup together. Of course, we need to also thank our great team here at Atolye for sponsoring the space and allowing us to bring the community together to talk about all things design. For today's meetup, if you guys would like to share any of your learnings, please do feel free to link up with us on our socials. So on LinkedIn, of course, our meetup, our group on LinkedIn, the HCD UAE group, we're constantly sharing cool things that are happening in the region as well. So please do follow us there on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, of course. So without further ado, I want to just introduce our, we'll go into the next slide, but sorry, Leen, am I not on the right slide? Okay. Sorry. So I want to introduce today Jonathan, who's going to be our speaker, who's also one of the founders actually of HCD. Jonathan works, he's the head of design at Property Finder, and he'll be coming today to speak to us about the design-led marketing. I'll let him introduce himself once he gets started. Okay, so also to pass it on to Leen, she's going to talk a bit about this wonderful space and the amazing work that they're doing here.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see a full house here today. I'm still getting used to the in-person events. Before I start, I know I'm not demonstrating this well, but if everyone can keep their masks on, I'll also grab mine. That's also something I keep forgetting. As long as you're, if you're drinking or eating, you could take it off, but just so we're safe in here. Do we have a clicker?
Yes, it's right.
Oh, great. Amazing. So welcome to Atolye, Dubai. How many of you have been here before? Whoa, cool. Amazing. New crowd. So I'll just give a really quick intro. But before I do that, actually, I'll do this at the end. Okay. So basically, Atolye is we like to call ourselves a community-powered organization. There's a few different arms to Atolye. One is a design studio, strategic design studio. We do all kinds of work around business design, architecture, spatial, service design, digital, brand, you name it. Actually, our team designed this space and some of the other spaces in these towers. The second piece is the academy, which is boot camps and trainings and programs that circle around radical collaboration, facilitation, design thinking. And last is the creative hub, which is what you're experiencing here today, which is a community of freelancers, creatives, technologists, designers, who become members of Atolye to get access to kind of this ecosystem. We have a hub in Istanbul. Istanbul's our original location. This is our second location in Dubai. We opened 2.5 months ago, so we're pretty new here in the physical space, but we've been doing projects for a few years. And what we like to say is it might seem like a co-working space. If you walk in during the day, actually where you're sitting is just a bunch of desks and a shared workspace. So it is a shared workspace, but the model is very different than your regular co-working space. We are a creative community that comes together to meet awesome people, to get connected to collaboration opportunities with each other, but also with our studio. So a lot of the projects that come in through our studio, we match to members. Of course, access to this space, access to our Istanbul space and our partner spaces, as well as all the events. So this is one of the public events but we also do a lot of community only and member only events. And so, yeah, we have a kind of a growing creative community and network here. These are some of our founding members, but we're very excited to launch membership very soon. It's actually live right now. If you would like to talk to us, Dana's in the corner. She's our community associate. By the way, my name is Leen. I didn't even introduce myself. I'm the creative hub lead here. And yeah, just talk to us about membership. We're slowly rolling it out, but we've started kind of taking applications. And a little bit, you know, of the kinds of events that we do. We do a lot of hybrid events like this one. By the way, this is the Zoom audience. If you want to talk to them, Jonathan, you can point over there. Like I said, this is your space. So we're actually opening it up for free day passes. So if you'd like to come by and try the space out, you can do so for the rest of the month. And these are some of our partners. We're also part of the Q Collective, which is a group of companies, global companies and creative organizations. And we're part of that collective, but we also have some amazing partners, including Dubai Future Foundation, Dubai Future Accelerator, and a few others. That's it. That was a very quick intro. If you post, please tag HCD, please tag us on Instagram, or you can visit our website. And before I hand it off to Jonathan, I want to do a very quick check-in with everyone. If you could turn to somebody that you don't know, preferably somebody, you know, in your vicinity, so we don't have too many people walking around, and answer the question, what is one thing that made you smile this week? And then switch places. We'll do this for like 30 seconds to a minute, and then I'm going to hand it over to Jonathan. You can go now. You can start.
Yes? Can you hear me online? It doesn't sound as loud as that. Okay, there we go.
Okay, so you can continue this conversation after Jonathan speaks. I hope you heard some nice things. And yeah, Jonathan, take it away.
Thank you so much. Everyone can hear me okay?
You have the clicker? Good.
Yes.
Great.
And online, this is all cool.
Well, now.
Awesome. Thanks everyone for joining us online. So first of all, welcome again. Thanks everyone for coming. Just want to echo as well what Nada said. We are a grassroots community event. Been going since 2013. And if anyone wants to speak, they have an idea and you would like to hear a talk about a subject, you want a workshop, a hybrid, anything at all, please reach out to Nada, myself, or some of our other co-organizers online, Greta and Assad. So we're always looking to improve. And the other thing is my style, whether I'm at work or here or when I speak, it's very much collaborative. If you have questions, it's not about the content, it's about the experience. Please, if you have questions, if you want to share something, we do want, if you don't mind, for those online to hear you. So there is a mic, and questions are being asked online as well. So jump in online if you have, we can have a bit of a discussion. Hopefully we'll try to get kind of through what I have to share, but I'm sure, yeah, so I've got some questions in here as well. So if I know your name, even if I don't know your name, I'm going to pick on you. If I know your name or met you before, I'm definitely picking on you. So just a warning. So heads up. So design-led marketing is a really cool topic. I only did this once. I'd love to do it some more and practice this where I work today at Property Finder. But it's a project which was the last project I did before moving here to the UAE in Australia. And I'll share a little bit about what the brief was and what we did and what some of the learnings are that some of you can take away as well today. So if you're wondering what the strange accent is, I have lived in many parts of the world. I'm not going to give you the life story, but some of those places are here. I was born in Israel. My parents are Brazilian from Sao Paulo and lived in Singapore, Abu Dhabi, Melbourne, Dubai, was here, left, came back. And I'm very much in all of those times about the community, giving back. I had amazing mentors and amazing people, and I still do and look for people. So if you have either you're interested in this career or you have a question, then you can find me on LinkedIn. Happy to set up a Zoom chat if you want, or a coffee or whatever. So feel free, please ask any questions. So a bit about the agenda today, what I'm going to talk about. It is a case study, so it's very much, kind of like a story, what we did, why we did it. I do want to kind of break it up a little bit and just introduce this thing. I've done a little bit of research on it since, but I'm interested to hear your thoughts on what is design-led marketing. It's not a mainstream topic that is being covered or is practiced from my experience. We'll talk about the project and the background on what this this initiative was. Phase one was discovery, like you typically have. We go out, we do research, or we run some internal workshops with subject matter experts. We gather whatever research we have. Then once we had all of that, we did a design sprint. I'll talk about what that is if some of you don't know what that is. And then a development sprint or sprints. And we finally then launched this campaign. This was about a campaign for a university. So I'm going to put it to you now. Really interested to hear your thoughts. Yes. What is design-led marketing? Great, we have a volunteer. I was going to pick someone that you're safe for me.
A design-centric approach towards marketing and user behavior, perhaps.
Okay. Yeah. Do you want to just pass the mic? Sorry.
Basically, looking at the customers, seeing empathetically what he needs, looking at his emotions or like his wants, which can be done in a very personalized way.
Yeah, great. This is awesome. Do this at work, nobody volunteered. I have to pick on them. Luckily, I know.
Design-led marketing is when you can focus your target audience on a specific thing that you want to market them. I think.
Okay. No, that's good. Yeah. Anyone else? Do you want to pass it back?
So marketing in a conventional way is all about the data and looking at the obvious. So anything where you look beyond the obvious and look at certain psychometrics behavior of your consumers is what design-led marketing is, according to me.
Beyond the obvious. I like that. Anything else? Anyone else? Cool. So I don't have a definition for you, but I do have a few quotes which I liked, and I think will also stimulate some thought and discussion. This one's from Adobe. Companies that put design at the very core of their brand are design-led. They weave design principles into everything they do, from research and strategy to creating content and marketing. They think beyond transactions and focus on beautiful experiences that build lasting and meaningful relationships with customers. So it's saying everything we do should be design-led. It's interesting, service design philosophy talks about we don't need to call it design anymore in the future. It's just how everyone operates. You don't need to have a designer or someone having that particular job role if everyone just understands the fundamentals right behind the philosophy. The other quote I liked is experience design is all about meeting customers where they want to be and creating products that improve the process of getting there. And I do think we often do this in design. We don't just, you know, those that aren't designers or don't have the experience sometimes think we go out, we ask people, what do you want? Would you pay for it? Obviously, we all know we don't do that, right? We observe how they perform those key workflows, those key jobs to be done. And we observe their behavior. Some of the most interesting insights we get are not by what people actually said, but by that behavior, by seeing the patterns in that behavior and then translating that into design. But often, especially in a lot of product companies, not just here, all over the world, we're always looking at the minimum viable product. We're looking at agile, we're looking at, you know, what can we do to test this idea? And we often forget the vision. We forget the ideal future state and where we should be heading towards. We just want to get it out there, get value, work really fast. And I guess what I'm going to talk about, which is it's a good kind of, you know, reflection point, and I think it applies to everyone, no matter where you are, what industry, it's spending the time and based on data, not based on just make belief, but based on your data is looking at the ideal future. Based on today, what is the current state? Where do we want to be? And then creating a map to roadmap to get to that future. You'll see what I mean shortly. Any thoughts on some of these quotes? Anyone wants to share anything? Anything online? Cool. So a little bit about this project. I was working at a experience design agency called Isobar, which is a global agency. And you know, you've got your experience designers, developers, strategists, marketers, etc. And we were working for an Australian university in Western Australia called Murdoch University. I had done some usability testing with this university, with the web team, and we were approached by the marketing team. We hadn't done work with them before. And the challenge here was the goals were very different by these two teams. Like many companies, I'm sure those that a lot of you work in, they didn't see eye to eye. There was a lot of conflict. Marketing and web clashed a lot, had different goals. The marketing team had a lot of money, wanted to do this amazing campaign. It didn't really care that much about what happened after the campaign. Whereas the web team actually wanted deeper links to, okay, yes, create a campaign, TV, radio, this, you know, landing site, a campaign site, etc. But then if someone wants to go deeper beyond just the campaign, they should be able to find whatever they're looking for on the website. So the challenge was to be the bridge between these two teams and you know, how might we create that? And in order to support that, we needed to get to the core of, you know, the target audience. Who is the target audience? And making sure that everything we do, you know, not only is attractive, but allows people, if they want to you know, find what they're looking for and apply and reach the goals of the campaign beyond just the, you know, that brand awareness. So the brief was, you know, kind of like what we think of in the movies, in sometimes, or some TV series in terms of marketing, just make it look cool. So we just want to show you some of these sites that were shared with us. Everyone can see this online, cool. So it was, you know, like we want these immersive, parallax websites, stuff's gotta be moving, gotta have video content. Yes, you know, there needs to be clear calls to action. But like I said, the marketing team or, you know, just make it look super cool. And the deadline was quite tight because obviously every year you've got, you know, like those of you who are or have been at, you know, universities or schools or anything, you've got, you know, certain things happen at certain points in the year and applications happen, etc. So this is just a glimpse. There was another side as well, but just to give you an idea of what the brief was after, and not a lot of the content was there yet already. So how do we create a great digital stories or great digital story? Any ideas? Where's the mic? Guilherme, I'm going to pick on you. You're shy. Don't be shy. Come on. What are some of the elements we need to create just a story? I mean, it could be digitally or otherwise.
A hook, beginning, middle, end, a hook,
Anything
plot,
else?
characters, dialogue, action.
Okay. Anyone else wants to share? Emotion, great. Just grab the mic. If you don't mind, just for those online.
So if you say you're selling books or something like that, so you need to sell that particular emotion with it. Not just selling a product would be enough, but selling an emotion with it would attract more customers and would lead more customers attracted to your brand.
Yeah, I think in today's age, it needs to be omnipresent. So digital, I mean, offline and online immersion of the customer's need is the current requirement. So as is this case, like we are here present offline as well as it's, I mean, there are people online. So, and also we need to engage with the customers on various social media platforms throughout.
Understanding what exactly the customer wants. The entire customer journey mapping, what they are translating it, the entire customer experience in today's time into a digital form can lead to a great digital stories.
Yeah, just behind you.
In my opinion, a story is when you start connecting the dots. So you start by telling that what the current problem is. The problem could be anything, maybe so it's getting too hot here in Dubai. You introduce a problem and then you talk about the premise that this is what you need to do. And then you pitch in your product and say that this is how we're going to help you. So you connect all three dots and that's art of storytelling, in my opinion.
Nice. Yes. Ben? That's okay. Leen, we're definitely recording, right? I forgot to ask you. Okay, all good.
I guess like every good story, you need a really good story. You need to be able to connect with your audience and you need to be able to capture your audience in the first 5 seconds. And then you can tell the story and you need to obviously get them deeper into the story and get them to be involved in the story. So that's for me a great story.
Okay, nice. Yeah, one more.
Yes, so what I would like to add is the connection that customers and your story makes with the customers is critical. So you need to walk the life of the customer and not just from your angle. It has to be perspective of the customer that you're walking. The second thing is the story needs to be such that it leaves the customer hungry for more and he's looking out for more information and he wants to engage with your content. So that's what makes it great.
Awesome. Yeah, a lot of great points there. So it's got to be relatable. And I think that's something we often, especially in Dubai, we forget, right? You see a lot of celebrities as advertising something. It's not necessarily relatable to the common man, woman, child. You know, you are not that celebrity. Especially if you see a celebrity just going to an ordinary home and they're actually, you know, probably living in some mansion. You're like, or immediately you switch off. So the story needs to be personable. It needs to create, as a lot of you have said, that emotional reaction. It needs to flow. Again, some of you spoke about, you know, like journey mapping. There has to be a logical order to the information. It's got to be easy to understand. It needs to be concise. You need to say only what the person needs to know in the right, right place, right time. You're capturing their attention for a short amount of time. It needs to be engaging, right? A lot of you spoke about that. You need to create a memorable moment. And a satisfying ending, really important. What's the takeaway? The so what? Okay, you've created this wow moment and some emotion, but what do you want them to action, to feel empowered and go away with? Or to do, potentially? So the approach, as I said, was, and this is the most interesting part of what I want to focus on today, some of the design tools, you could say, or activities we did. Empathy mapping, don't know if people have heard of that. I'm going to ask you in a minute. So, hypothesis framework, creating hypothesis. The ACE framework, audience, channel, and experience. What does that mean? We'll chat about it. And then, of course, that customer journey mapping, but journey mapping all of your customers on all of their channels. And this is customer journey mapping from more of a marketing perspective, right? Not just what we think of in traditional design perspective. And then we took all of that, and it was a hybrid of a design sprint. I'll touch on what a design sprint is. If you are interested in design sprint, we did a meetup not that long ago. It was actually during the pandemic. You can find it on our YouTube channel about design sprints. And there's a lot, online you can find out as well, but they're great tools. I'll chat about that as well. And then in less detail, it's not the core of the talk, but what is a development sprint, and a few of those. And finally, that release. And the campaign wasn't just like a big bang release, but there was, more content was added over time. And even now, a framework was built, and the university now don't need outside help. They can add more content, and you'll see what that result looks like. So one important thing is I didn't do all of this on my own, right? There are great teams and great collaborative teams that it takes. And it wasn't just these individuals, right? My role was, the title was Strategic Design Associate Director, but the role was, you could say like a head of design, or I don't know, design lead, something like that. We had an amazing lady flying from Melbourne, an expert in less the design, more the marketing and the content strategy. And she ran some of the workshops, and all of it we kind of planned together. This isn't a cookie cutter, hey, we need to do design-led marketing. We understood the problem, and as a team, we put together some of these workshops of what you'll see. And then the rest of the Perf team was a UX designer, a specialist in visual design, Scrum Master, and I'm not talking about the engineers, right? But there were obviously front-end engineers involved. It was a CMS that we had already used, so it was mostly a lot of that magic which you saw in that parallel side. You need those front-end experts. So the start, as I said, was discovery. And some of you spoke about this. I think it's a really important point to, sometimes we rush into workshops and research. The start has always got to be the customer and prioritizing the customer. And I think whether you're client side or agency side, it doesn't matter. We often try to just say, this applies to everyone, or ignore personas or customers and just kind of start something. But prioritizing the customer is really important. And acknowledging who are we not designing for. Yes, they're important, but not as important as these customers. So I'll talk about that, how we did that. What are the phases of the journey? Again, sometimes we just, rush to do this, and we Google it online, and you just get, your classic, sales journey or buying journey. But it's important to adapt our journey to whatever subject or audience we're talking to. What are the phases that this customer goes to? And empathy mapping, I'll talk a bit about that as well, and looking at the future state, not just, like that current state. So I'm not going to show you the slide, but one of the exercises we did with the university. So as I said, it was that team, but there were also a lot of experts from the university and subject matter experts and people who had done research prior, both not just, like both marketing research as well as, our, let's say, design research or UX research, usability testing. So those experts were involved. We looked at value versus cost of delay. So what is the lifetime value of this customer versus the cost of not delivering this service to them in time? Our primary audience, and this is also really important, I think we sometimes forget this, there could be the buyer is different from your actual primary user, but you need to think about both and potentially map the experience of both. So we're looking at secondary school students. The focus was local, so international is a huge money-making revenue machine for all Australian universities. They're all suffering now because Australia, shut the borders to the world. Really sad. But the focus was very much on local students. So the complexity of global and international was out of scope, which is probably a good thing. As a designer, right, you want to reduce the scope and reduce the focus in everything we do. But is it a year 8, which is the beginning of secondary school in Australia? Year 9, 10, 11, year 12 is a bit too late. You've already made the decisions. Year 8 is probably too early. You're not necessarily thinking about this, you just got to high school. And are parents a priority? This was a huge debate. The client, some people and some strong stakeholders said, no, parents are not a priority. Having worked in universities for a lot of my career, maybe both here and in Australia, and being a parent, yes, my kids are young, but I know the important role, having done UX research for universities, that parents play. So I was trying to change that mindset, and luckily, yes, we were able to change it, because no, the parent is not your primary user, but they're a massive influencer in that decision, right? Could be direct or indirect. So I'm not going to go through all these in detail, but just to give you an idea, and this came after creating a lot of workshops, looking at a lot of data and research. What do year 9s want? They were one of the priorities, right? We focused on 3, it was year 9s, group 10, 11s, and parents. Year 9s are just after that cool thing. I want to do cool stuff with my friends. Year 9s are the raw emotion and creative spark behind the campaign. We want to wow them. We don't want to bore them with detail. We want them to look for unique and cool experiences, but we still want them to start that conversation and embed, the seed of, hey, this university might be an option. An important thing I didn't cover in the beginning is Perth has 1.5 million, close to 2 million people, 5 universities. This was number 3 and 4. So it's not your primary choice. It's not the century-old, university that's established. You're, kind of Ivy League. If you're, for anyone dialing in from the US, but like your old and established university, and it's not also the number 2. So it's fighting for that 3 and 4 position, but it wants to change that image. So how do we do that? Then you've got your year 10s and 11s, and in Australia, you have to select your grades, your subjects for year 11 and 12. Those are the subjects that you're going to do a final exam before you go into university. So in year 10 and 11, that's when, that year 10 is making a choice, he or she, for the first time in their life, that will determine their future. So, but you're not necessarily talking courses to them, but you're talking about careers. Okay, so they need to be able to imagine themselves at the university. They're looking for relatable, authentic experiences, and they want to know, that the time at university will be enjoyable. It's not school. How do you talk to others? And then finally, the parent. I want my child to be happy and have a good job. The parent is thinking of the longer journey, right? They're thinking about after university. Will this thing get them a job so they can move out of home and don't have to support it or whatever? Not necessarily, right? But they're looking for detailed university. They're looking for credible and proven experience. Like either potentially they studied at this university, so hopefully they had a good experience and they're an advocate, or they haven't, but it needs to be a part of their world. It needs to be, within that choice. And the phases of the journey, that we kind of honed in and settled on were awareness. You're aware of the university, initial consideration, the opportunities and experiences at Murdoch are showcased, so it's part of your thinking. You're actively evaluating, you've got that emotional connection, you're really considering this as a viable option. You wanna, and as you can see, obviously, as you all know, we want to move people down this funnel. Then there's that moment of decision. You're actually looking for a pathway to beyond the campaign. I want to enroll my child, I want to support them, or if you are the child, you want to, like, what does enrollment look like if I have to do this? And the ideal state, which we all strive for, no matter what industry, is really building advocates. So having a great experience throughout the journey with hopefully no confusion, no pain, or too much of it, and promoting actively, organically, not paid promotion, the university as a place to study. Any questions? I've kind of gone through a few things. Any thoughts on customers, journey phases? Yes, we have the mic. Sorry, in the corner.
Hi, so my question is, you're talking about year 9 and 10 and 11. So when does the candidate make the decision of going to the university? So what's like the starting stage when you have to introduce them to the university, and what's the end stage for the decision making?
Yeah, great question. So, and it's important to set the context, because I'm sure it's different to how things are here. So it all builds up over time. So your grades, even in year 8, the level of maths, science, English, history, etc., art that you do will move you on, and you'll start having prerequisites to get into some of those higher. Like within maths, you've got like the simple maths and the complex maths. And then in year 10, you need to be doing those higher subjects to get into year 11 and 12 in that top subject. So ideally, yes, you would know, because there are university courses that have prerequisites. You have to have studied this particular level of, say, maths, for this example, or physics within science to get into this course at university. So it's quite a crucial choice at that year 10 level, what subjects you do in high school, which is year 11 and 12. Because it's not just your grade, it's also the subjects that you choose. Does that kind of answer your question? And then you only have to fill in it's only in that year 12, in your final year, that you put in your university choices. This is my first choice, my second choice. Once you get the results of the kind of statewide exams, and you see your mark, you might go, actually, I really wanted to study, I don't know, medicine, don't have, so you can change your choice. But ideally, like you see, you want the option to be considered early on. So students start looking for, okay, what grades do I need? And those grades, for example, that's a great example of something that's not part of a campaign, but it's something that if you're at the right place at the right time, you want people to be able to find easily, to have those links within the campaign to the actual website, right? Hopefully that made sense. What is empathy mapping? Look, just before you go, sorry. I'm gonna pick on someone as a share. Laura's hiding very well.
Yeah, so empathy mapping is a method that you would use to kind of have a proto persona of the user that you want to target and the customer that you want to target, kind of a very simplified version of those high details of what the customer is, what they're saying, what they're feeling, what they're thinking in a specific moment of time, so that you can start to relate and put yourself into the shoes of that customer.
Nice. Anyone else? Did you want to share?
I think empathy mapping is when you put yourself in the shoes of customer and you start thinking from his angle, what are the emotions, what are the thoughts that are going in his mind at different stages of the journey. So you start thinking that, let's say that right now he's getting information about, he's in, let's say 9 and 10. He's thinking about subjects and which subjects should I pursue. in 11th, 12th. So you influence that, and you start putting aside that what are the choices that are in front of him, what are the choices, how will he do a rational thinking, what factors will he take into account while thinking. So you start thinking from a customer's angle throughout the different phases of the customer journey.
Wow, perfect. Yeah. Yes.
I would echo what everyone else has said before me, but what I want to add is looking at that empathy map and linking it to the value proposition of the campaign. Does it do all those game creators? Are they going to match? Are they going to resolve the pains? Whatever this campaign is going to be. So it has to link. You can do a great empathy map, but if it doesn't link to the actual value proposition of what you're trying to achieve, it's not going to work.
Yeah, great point. Anyone else? Cool. So yeah, I just want to touch on, it's great doing this question thing, it makes it even better. What some of you have said, which you reminded me, is that, yes, especially as a consultant, we often have to remind our client to anchor to the customer. So it's a great point that you shared. Because often people jump to solution mode. Even as designers, we're guilty of it. And we're very quick to jump to the solution mode. And some of you, I think, shared this earlier. It needs to start with the problem. What problem are we solving and for who? It needs to start with the customer. And if we ever get lost in research or in design or marketing or whatever we're doing, let's go back to that anchor of who is the customer, what is their pain. And yeah, just that final point, it was a really good one you made, which is, it's not about a vision of some dream unrealistic state, right? The people that were involved in this workshop were subject matter experts, and we looked at the research that had been done prior and were realistic with what could be done. So yes, on the one hand, like if you're a consultant, clients love this because you can just go, hey, let's do blue sky thinking and go nuts with this. But the important thing in our job, our responsibility, is to just bring it back to reality. We still need to be ambitious and have a stretch goal, of course, but it's important to bring it back. So kind of jumping, but like a lot of you have said, it's a way of visualizing the journey, the customer journey emotions, to understand when things are working really well and when they're working really poorly. What are those engagement levels like? It's a way of focusing towards the ever evolving and changing expectations and quality of what an experience should feel like. And again, this is where we, I think, sometimes bring marketing to design. So as some of you have suggested, the V1 of empathy mapping is everything you see except for the pains and gains at the bottom, which is thinking about what are people saying? Or what do we, so either you could do this for the current state. What are people saying about us and our brand today? What are they thinking? What are they hearing? What are they saying, doing? What are their attitudes, their dreams, ambitions? What is their pain? What are their frustrations? What are their goals, successes? What is their gain? So we can do that with cross-functional team inside of our organization, just so we're all aligned on what data do we have, what research do we have. But you can also do it for the future state. Where do we want to be? What do we want people to be saying about us? What do we want them to be thinking about us? And then how might we get there, right? Why do we do this? It helps us to address the needs of people that we want to communicate this. And when should we do it? We can do it at many different intervals in time. We can do it when we just finished conducting research, before we define, as was just shared, that communication barrier and task, like how we're going to deliver the message to this audience. And as some of you have said, not expecting you to read this, by the way, we can do it across our journey and with our prioritized audience. So we've got here the audience, the stages of the journey, And here's the, the keys at the bottom. This was V1, we didn't do V2, just to save time and, to reduce the complexity. But this was a really good starting point to just say, okay, what is all the information we know and what are we trying to achieve here? Does this make sense? Any questions or thoughts? Anyone wants to share? Sure. Yes, so I will just ask for examples. So like I said, this was the ideal future state. So imagining a world where we've launched this amazing campaign, we know what our audience is like, who they are, like you saw earlier, that was established. And what do we, at each point of the journey, so awareness, for example, for a year 9, what do we want them to see? We want them to see, I don't know, Snapchat, Instagram. We want them to see an ad, and what do we want them to hear? Maybe want to hear a friend share this with them. What do we want them to think and feel, say and do? We want them to be talking about this to their friends, to their, like their little cliques, their communities. And we want them to know that this is linked to the university. It's not just this cool thing. So we want to start, at least just plant that seed. Yes, it's ambitious. How do you measure it? Yes, you can measure it. You can test it. You can see with all of these campaigns, are people sharing this? You can do studies. You can do research. You can do one-on-one interviews. You can do surveys, etc., with this audience. And throughout, now you see active evaluation, moments of decision, and advocacy. There's not much in there. That's because for this audience, they're not there. There might be a little bit. We want to create advocates, but they're not there. But a year in 10, 11, yes, and parents definitely. So yes, it's a hypothesis, but it's ideally based on data, based on research that you've done. Any other questions? Cool. The next thing, which I think also we're often guilty of in many companies, consultants, in-house, client side, whatever, is we often just do stuff and we forget about the measurement. How are we going to measure if this thing is successful? How are we going to know if it's successful? What does success look like? What are metrics to tell us what success is? So creating and defining for each of our audience groups what is the ideal state is really important. And now, one important thing before I kind of share the next slide is that this is a university, right? And not criticizing universities, but they're not typically places that, like, I don't know, your e-commerce or your product companies that have hard metrics. We want to move conversion from 6 to 7.5. So it was a marketing audience that also, they might have, I don't know, data on socials, etc., but this wasn't typically done. So we didn't have hard numbers, but we did have, an idea of what success looked like. So this was done in a workshop with the stakeholders. Everyone did it individually. And then as a group, we came together and formed something like this, because for year 9s, we need to reach year 9 students where they are. We need to stand out and hook them. Some of you mentioned the hook. They won't come looking for us or be looking out for us. So if we create an immersive, interactive, emotional experience, a wow moment and positive interaction with the brand, then year 9s will share with friends and attribute this content to Murdoch. So that's what success would look like for that audience. That's clear, it's established. Everyone knows like the start and the end. Who is the customer? What is the journey? And what does success look like? Because in the middle, as you all know, we sometimes lose track of the goal. Really important to establish that. And I mean, I'll share with you, because I don't think we're too rushed. I think we're okay on time. The other ones. For year 10s, it's the first time that they're acknowledging change. and are being asked to make a decision for themselves, first time in their lives, right? If we show them the joy in this change or choice, it's not a scary thing like, oh my God, the world's going to come to an end if you don't pick this thing, right? And help them explore the future, not just say, you know, like your grandfather was a doctor, your father's a doctor, so you have to be a doctor. You know, give them that exploration, that choice. Will create a positive emotional connection between year 10s and, you know, the university, or year 11s and 12s. And for parents, because they are highly invested and involved in the child making that right decision for the future, that could be indirectly as well, right? Parents have to be subtle sometimes because you don't want to be the nagging parent, and none of us want to have that nagging parent. So it was interesting, you know, some of the prior research, parents are sometimes like very subtle with nudging the child to, hey, there's this thing, and your friends going, maybe you want to go, you know, or have you seen this thing? If we provide them with clear understanding, tools, resources, guide them through the process, which reassure and empower them, they will become a stronger advocate, or at least would consider this when perhaps before it wasn't a choice. And it's interesting, some of the research, I worked at NYU Abu Dhabi and I spoke to local Emirati students. It was very hard to reach this audience, but I spoke to first-year students in the university. That was some of the best, you know, research I had done. And they often said the parent didn't have the opportunity to study at a university. So they were living through the child. And I'm sure that happens not just for Emiratis, that happens all over the world. So we can't forget this audience. It's not just them worried about the child, it's them living through the child and wanting to step through the journey. You know, so how do we cater for that? How do we help with them with that journey? Any questions on hypothesis? I'm kind of in the post. We have questions online. We don't have to wait till the end. I think it'd be good to involve those online. Any questions on hypothesis? Clear? I think people have probably heard of it, but I do think it's something, and even myself, I'm guilty of it. We forget to do this, or we kind of just do it quickly and then we never look at it again, right? See a lot of nodding heads. Do we have the mic? Yeah, we've got a question or comment at the front. Sorry.
So my question wouldn't be with the context of the university and of course the students, right? In some cases, or let's suppose an agency providing a service, right? Or a property developer might have different kinds of user personas, or, you know, many ideal customer profiles. They can't really pinpoint. So do you recommend the hypothesis for all kinds of users that you may identify?
So like I said earlier, it's a really important point. Don't do it for everyone. Don't create 10 personas. It's waste. You're not going to be able to create that level of complexity.
And that
In
has
the
been
time
a
that you
challenge.
have,
I mean,
right?
that is a challenge for some company where either their design-led marketing, or let's suppose their marketing efforts are too broad, and they actually know that their customers are really different from each other.
Yeah, so look, Property Finder, where I work, right?
Who's gonna get to that?
Who's the customer? Everybody. It's not like it's a startup and you're, you know, I advise founders, and I often tell them, don't tell me everyone's your customer, because if everyone's your customer, then no one is your customer. And you're not going to, you know, if you don't find those early adopters, establish yourself as a startup. Really important product. But even for large companies, and I've, with some of my colleagues, some of them are here, have been a part of workshops with marketing. So even marketing will look at, have a huge budget and look at targeting on social media, on campaigns, online, offline, etc. Don't look at hundreds of customers. They are very targeted. And because otherwise, if you don't have that focus, then you're not going to do a great job, period. Even if you have massive companies with massive resources. And that's why I say back to here, at the very beginning, make those difficult decisions. and put a scale. I didn't show the scale because I didn't want to confuse everyone. There was like, it was maybe a little bit too complex, but if you've got on a scale, you could, and there's different ways of prioritizing. You can look at prioritization, that's a whole other talk, but you can look at value versus cost of delay. There's many different ways of prioritizing. But if you look at each of your audiences and you think about their priority, can you merge some of them like we do? Attention. Is it too early to talk to them, too late? What is, I mean, if you're talking about, I don't know, like a property finder, what is the strategy? So the strategy is not always money related. Could be, where are we making money? Out of which audience? Let's focus on that. Ignore the other. Or maybe it's not, maybe it's market share. So even if we're not making money from this audience, we want to beat the competition to this particular audience in this particular geographic region or this particular socioeconomic group or whatever. But there needs to be a strategy and there needs to be prioritization. Otherwise, imagine doing, this exercise, or it's going to get more complex as I go along, but doing this for, I don't know, 6, 8, 9 groups. And unless you get into that level of detail, you're not going to achieve your goal of speaking to them at the right place, the right time, with connecting to them. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yes, then, and then we'll go to.
So the next slide, you spoke about defining metrics and KPIs, and then you went into hypothesis. So I want to understand, so from the hypothesis come the metrics and the KPIs, or these are the metrics and KPIs?
So yeah, like I said, in a more mature organization, yes, you can have at the then stage your metric. So you can't, but because they had never done this before, even as a marketing team, we didn't want to go too far, like sprint before you could crawl. But yes, you would want to put hard metrics, KPIs, OKRs, whatever acronym you like, into what does sharing with your friends really mean? What does success look like for that? For this population, and if we're spending X on these platforms, what does great look like? You want to have a target.
So it comes from the metrics and KPIs.
100%. Yeah, sorry. Do you mind passing on?
I have a question from the previous slide. The awareness. Yeah, this one.
This one?
Yeah. So I just want to understand. So for parents, for example, awareness is of high priority. I mean, how have we, benchmark these criteria? So in the first case, you have like around 6-7 stickers or stars. So can you just explain that?
I mean, there's no, the number of Post-it notes is not related to priority.
Okay.
This is just a digitization of Post-its on a wall.
Right. Okay.
In a workshop.
In a workshop, okay.
This is a workshop with 5 subject matter experts from the university, myself and one colleague, the UX designer. And it's just digitizing what they had said. They had a giant Miro board that we had shared everything we had done. And I showed the personas first, but out of all of this and other data was how we created those personas.
Okay. And the second thing is, how do you measure a wow moment? So in the hypothesis, it was mentioned that in the second slide. Yeah, so a wow moment and positive interaction with the brand. So how do you measure that in terms of metrics?
So ultimately, it's the action. A wow moment is measured by, are they going to share this? How many people shared? And are they going to attribute the content? If we do a survey after the fact, if we do research, and I do a one-on-one interview, how many people recollected that this cool, I don't know, like we had, for example, at this university, it's pretty cool there. the best in this state, and I mean even beyond nationally and you know within the region at marine biology, for example, and forget the name, animal doctors. Someone help me out. Yes, thank you. They've got an amazing bike facility. So you can go to the northwest of Western Australia and swim with whale sharks. That's part of your course. So some of the whales that you saw, that's why the university loved it. It's like, how can you bring that to life to get someone excited about a university? So if you just see a whale, do you just recall the whale, or do you actually say, hey, this is related to the university? And then as you go down the line to maybe someone more mature, older, are they going from, and you can track, right? We do have technology today. Do they go and actually apply to the university? Are they looking at certain pages? As a result of the campaign, we know what the median kind of, you know, engagement with certain pages or of the website are. Has it moved? Has it gone up? You can track all of those actions. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
So the next step, as I said, was the ACE framework. Identifying, and I think some of you, again, you know, kind of spoke about this earlier, identifying who is the audience, what are their barriers, like a good story, right? We need a conflict, but what's the barrier? How are they going to, you know, overcome that barrier? What channels will we use? Will we talk to this audience with? And what does that experience need to look like that we need to create? Why use this? To help us to make sure that we're saying the right thing to the right people at the right time, to shape the campaign itself, help us create that journey map, and align the experience, customer experience planning with the actual marketing, media plans, you know, create that glue, that roadmap. All of these activities are not just for the fun of it, but actually link all of these things to the content. How do we target? How do we, you know, engage this audience? So step one was doing this per audience. So looking at the persona, the hypothesis that we had for that persona, the journey phases, the task and the audience, that what's the job to be done, their actions, what channels are we going to deliver this message to this audience, and what that experience needs to look like within that. You know, this is just at a high level plan, and I've only shown it for, you know, one audience group. The next step, which I'll show in a detail more in a second in more detail, you can kind of see it here on the right, is that journey mapping. So prioritizing the key barriers for each audience at each phase, how we're going to solve that, identifying those channels, understanding the emotional state of the audience. So at that barrier point, what is their emotional state? It's not all happy path, right? They could be confused, etc. And what experience is needed to solve it. So what that looks like is this. We've got on the, and apologies for those online, you probably can't see the red ticker, I don't know. But. Do we have a question?
Yeah, we have a question.
Great. Okay.
Read it.
I'll pause.
Cool. So, whoa, that's loud. I'll read it from over there. So the question is from Richie, and she says, how did you balance the tension, if there was any, between educating the client on the process and applying the process?
Great question. And look, depending on the region and the country you're in, this and the client too, this really differs, right? I mean, I have not been a consultant in Dubai, but I have many friends who are. I know it's a massive challenge, massive. So educating the client is huge pain. It's all about, obviously I'm generalizing, there are some, you know, amazing clients, I'm sure, but there is a lack, I think, of education and understanding of the design craft, why we do what we do and what's the value in it. one of the cool things about this, and also I think having had experience personally working for universities, worked for University of Western Australia, which was the #1 kind of university in Perth, and I worked at New York University, Abu Dhabi. So I was able to talk to, past experience. And universities generally, I would say, especially in Australia, are easier clients because we're not talking about dollars, cents, buying something online, go, fast, fast, fast. This is a journey that happens over years, right? And the actual client is not making personal gain from somebody signing up. And even if the numbers go up by a little bit, yes, that's their target and their goal, but their salary is not tied to this. So just to establish, this is a dream state of a client who came to us as experts. Yes, there was some, I think it wasn't education of the methodology. They believed that we knew what we were doing. And look, like typical consultants, yes, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors. And you need the confidence, right? And the experience. And some of my colleagues had never done this. I had never done some of these things, but obviously you don't say that to the client. And I think what real success looks like, which is often hard state to get to with a client, is true collaboration. Is the client giving you that time to immerse in the project, spending days together, and feeling like there is no more client and consultant, you're together trying to achieve this. If they believe that you truly want this to be a success, I mean, I think the other advantage is you're not tied into hundreds of projects, but you are, at the time, because you are dedicated to this thing. Yes, there might be other things in the, peripheral. But yeah, I mean, I do want to acknowledge that typically there is a lot of hard work in educating clients. But this wasn't the case. And also it was on the back of completing usability testing study. So we had some credentials in understanding their university, their pains with a different team, but still, some people were involved. Hopefully that kind of answers the question. Any other questions? Cool. So this was really cool. I love this workshop. Like I said, this was the first and only time I've done this. I'd love to, I'm trying to hopefully maybe do this again at Property Finder. We've got at the top, so I'll start from the top. The green post, this is our journey, awareness, initial consideration, etc. We've got our audiences, so the year 9, year 10, 11, and parents. We've then got all of these dots that you see, those are our channels. So we've got, Facebook, Instagram, it could be a full dot or a half dot. Again, this is in a workshop, right, with the subject matter experts and the people who are doing this job for the university. And then at the bottom, we've got what I spoke about in a second is those barriers and the emotional state of the audience. So up here, we've got for that audience, what we kind of did the workshop before, but more detail, like what, like from that ACE kind of, the ACE framework, what are they trying to do? What's the action? What's the barrier we want to overcome? And what's the experience needed to solve that problem? So we're quite clear with, at this stage, this is the barrier. This is how we're going to overcome it, or what the campaign needs to deliver, and what's the call to action. So we're getting into more detail, right? If you're thinking of, say, a page or, social media action or something. And at the bottom, we've got their emotional state. And you see like a lot of kind of, I don't know if you can see, there's a lot of kind of confused faces at the bottom of the screen. Any questions on this? And look, it doesn't have to be as complex as this. And you could potentially skip some of those earlier workshops, but there is huge value in doing this, right? This is your strategy. You can turn this into a strategy document. This is how we're going to deliver this experience to this audience. Yes, sir?
Can I say about the mic?
Do we have the mic? Just for those online, I'm going to have an immersive experience for those online.
Just out of curiosity, how long was this customer journey mapping it took for you to compile everything together? And
this was done in a day.
This was all done in a day.
Oh, not working. This was a day.
The entire thing happened in a day.
And the same for, I mean, you know, it could be less than a day, but whatever, with breaks for the various audiences. Because I mean, you need to collaborate, you need to allow different people to, you know, to share, etc. The next phase, and like I said, that was the kind of core of what I wanted to share, was the design sprint. And for those of you who don't know, this is a rapid way of doing design, prototyping, and testing. It's not necessarily back to back in a week. Can be, you know, these days over 2 weeks, for example. But basically, you go from how might we review that customer journey map? So how might we solve this problem? What are the success metrics? Some storyboarding, what this looks like. On the second day, ideation. So we do a whole bunch of prototyping. We refine what we've got. What are our content needs? Because remember, this needs to be tied into the campaign. And it's not just about a whole bunch of workshops and you go away and magically this website happens. The clients themselves created a lot of amazing content, which I'll show you, you know, soon. Of the content needs to be there, just to be clear. And then this is something we did ourselves as an agency. It was, you know, myself, the UX designer and the visual designer. So, you know, once we were clear on the direction and all of these prototypes, allowing the client to be involved, creating a low fidelity prototype, an interview guide for how we're going to usability test this prototype. And then in one day, and this was really tricky because in Australia, I don't know about here, you have to have a government authority permission to work, to be present with underage, with minors, anyone under 18. So this was all done on Zoom. Their parents were aware. The university was heavily involved in the recruitment. We gave them incentives. The incentives were beyond monetary, so we gave them like a tour. We thought of something that, you know, could be relatable, meaningful to them. And that was hugely valuable because that's when the rubber kind of, you know, hits the road. Let's test some of these ideas with the real audience. Goes beyond just, you know, we know everything and we've done all the research and we're expert. Like, let's really do some of this testing and you iterate, right? And that's the advantage of this design sprint. Traditionally, you go from idea, you build something, you launch it, and then you learn. Then it's really expensive if you need to change things, because you need engineers involved, etc. To just in a week or in 2 weeks even. And if any of you, I think some of you chatted earlier, are looking at a startup, please test your ideas early. Do research early. The earlier you get feedback, the earlier you would pivot. Don't think it's not ready, they can't show it to anyone. You draw it on a napkin, it's ready. Ask someone, you know, for some feedback. And why do we do this? Essentially, it's to get, you know, it's to fail early, to get that early feedback before we launch. There's a lot of books, it's a whole other talk, like I said, on design sprints. And by the end of it, the great thing is we can have a prototype. We could start building something. And potentially, right, at the end of this, maybe we actually need to go back and maybe do another week of this. Do some more ideating, because we did some testing on the 5th day and people hated it. We didn't hit the mark at all. So it's okay to refine. A lot harder when it's a client and they've paid you a lot of money already. So hopefully you're going the right direction, but just saying, you know, this can be repeated. So this is what it looked like. This was the agency. So, I mean, this was another thing I'd recommend to you is don't always do it with the client in their site. Get them out of the office, thinking fresh ideas. In a place, you know, this is a beautiful office. It was a great place. That's where we hosted the meetups in Perth. Great view. And give them the chance to be involved. You don't have to be a designer to draw boxes, right? Anyone can ideate. Like, and then talk about what do people like, they don't like, put some, you know, do some sharing. Again, this is a day of ideating. It's not, you know, it's not hard and kind of narrowing in on what you're gonna do. Yes.
In the second day.
Wait, Mike.
Hello. Okay. So on day 2,
who does the prototyping? Who has the ownership, let's say? Who can do prototyping on the day two?
So like I said, the clients are ideating, they're prototyping, everybody's prototyping. It's a great way to democratize design. You got salespeople, marketing people, let everyone do it. You don't have to use everyone's ideas.
Yeah.
That's A, right? You can choose, but also you can, sometimes some of the greatest ideas might come from the most unexpected source. And others go, oh yeah, I love that. Maybe they didn't draw it perfectly, but they had an amazing idea. So it's, you know, it's a great way to involve them. And then, like I was saying, once we took all those ideas and we refined them, we aligned, we understood the content needs, because there obviously needs to be a content strategy and plan. We created, so the UX, the UI person, visual designer, myself, we narrowed in on low fidelity prototype. And within, I mean, sometimes you need maybe 3 days, depends on the complexity of the prototype, maybe a week you need just for, you know, that low fidelity prototype. But it shouldn't be too high fidelity because you just want to get, you know, that early feedback.
Right. No, I agree. I agree, but I disagree. That's why I asked.
Okay, please disagree.
Because I feel it's just a personal experience that I had of, and maybe Richie, the previous question was regarding the learning, right? Like you have to educate your clients. Like sometimes with the clients, personal experience, right? They are not bothered about the process you are into. It's okay. I trust you, and then you get it done. You get that last mile done. We wanted to interact. I think that's fair, and at some point it works. I think for you work, for me it didn't work. Problems I had with these is just like sharing, right? It looks like a
it's good therapy.
it's a pain, like I want to share with you guys, you know. So it's like you got into people designing it, right? And they got so much into it that they thought, I want that thing there. It's like, okay, your idea is nice, but like maybe there's a spin of it got so much attached to their design, but it's a prototype that they wanted to see that there. So then you're clashing, you're having conversations to convince the person that, look, that's not going to be that way in particular. So that was the problem I found by allowing people to do the design. Yeah? Randomly.
Yeah, no, look, you always have tricky stakeholders, even in-house, right? We've done a lot of this at Property Finder in different areas. And yes, people do get attached, but that's where data can come in. I think instead, my you know, kind of 2 cents on that was, instead of having the debate here, have it after you've done your testing. Let the client speak for what works, what doesn't work. And look, we don't have to do narrow in on one thing. I mean, that's my big push to design teams. I've managed even to myself, and I'm often guilty of it too, don't get me wrong. Don't just design one thing. Let's do A/B testing. Let's do ABC testing. Design 4 things, and maybe as a team narrow in on 2. You can do A/B testing. There needs to be a reason why you're testing these 2 different pathways, but don't just narrow in on one thing, test that one thing, and you're done. So potentially you could say, okay, great, we're going to build that, we'll test it. And let's let the customer decide. But I agree, even when sometimes people go, oh, no, they're wrong, the customer doesn't know, and we should still do my thing. I hear you. I've had those people as well. Any other questions? Yeah.
Yeah, so for how might we, I have 3 questions, they're related.
Sure.
I would like to, if you could give me an example for how might we. I'm confused because for my experience, I struggle to understand, should I focus how might we for the acquisition stage, or for the discovery stage, or for the awareness stage? So how would you deal with such situations that are marketing related? Would you cover each stage in this design sprint, or would you have different design sprints for finding out how might be to address each people in each journey?
Wow, great question. So, I mean, yes, you can have it at any point in time. I think like a big philosophy of design sprints, and I guess this is not, so now we've kind of stepped a little bit into more product or UX design, we've done the marketing kind of part, and we're clear on the message we want to send, who we want to send to, and we're narrowed down to this campaign. It's not looking at everything. now we are designing this landing page, right? So the beginning of this design sprint looks at that audience and merging maybe all of this, and then being clear on how might we solve whatever barrier we're trying to overcome for this audience. So yes, there needs to be prioritization, but there is no one kind of silver bullet or answer. Like, I mean, I think this is a great thing. Like, so I think this also helps us to stay at a level above the solution. This is a challenge we have often, you know, like Property Finder. Is that stakeholders, even colleagues, etc., designers, non-designers, are focused and just talking about the solution. And the solution needs to be an experiment. That's the important, I think, concept. Even with a marketing campaign, your marketing, your Instagram is an experiment to see, does it engage? You need to stay at that how micro level. And then how you do that is by going back to those hypothesis metrics. How are we going to create a wow, relatable experience for this year 9 that will be shared? The solution is an experiment, and we need to continue to experiment, not be tied to, let's just do this wow thing on this website. But does that make sense? I know I can't exactly kind of answer you.
So, just one more. So the third thing is,
Yeah, we're nearly, yeah. Sure.
so do you consider, because now this example is for the landing page, but do you consider different channels or touch points with this whole design sprint consideration? Like, should we consider it? Is it a good practice?
So yes, but in this example, the output of this engagement was the landing page. So yes, we went broader earlier on, and this was part of the content, you know, strategy. University looked at, but that was maybe a little bit out of scope. Okay, so right now we've understood it. Now let's design it. And I'm just going to kind of wrap up, and then we can open up to questions. And then the final phase, which I won't go into huge detail, is, but we've got all of these ideas. We need to then narrow in and understand, you know, what does the minimum viable product, or what does campaign V1 look like? And you need to involve, obviously, I mean, they're involved earlier on. I didn't talk about them too much, but your engineers, etc. Create a backlog and, you know, some sprint planning. What can we achieve in 2-week sprints, for example? This needs to be broken up, right, into, you know, your Lego pieces. There needs to be integration with the content management system, which, you know, we have that in-house expertise, the agency, and the ability to do this ideal state with that. And the performance needs to be robust, right? That's super key. Someone with potentially, you know, what is their internet connection going to look like? What kind of devices do they have? Where are they? And you're loading all of this heavy content. That performance needs to, you know, needs to be relevant. And what I was really happy about, so I left Australia, moved to Dubai almost 2 years ago, and right about, I think in this end of the kind of development sprint, it wasn't launched yet. And the great thing was, this actually won local, national, and international awards. And I don't want to, obviously, I'm not, like, you know, taking credit. I was really excited, you know, happy to be a part of it. But the winner was very much the content. It was also the process which enabled all of this content. But the content was, these are not celebrities. The content allowed the university to show people what it's like, some of the untold stories, and to relate to, I just want to, you know, kind of share now. I'll just switch and show you that the final piece. And the nice thing is, like, these students were not there at launch, right? They've got this framework now to change, you know, to grow the content. And you've got stories of real people that anyone could relate to, that can see themselves as, you know, as being those people. So let's just pick somebody at random. Obviously, it's, you know, servers are in Australia, so the loading time's not great, but well, not too bad. A tech graduate making a real difference. his name, what he's studying, a little bit about him. We've got links to the university, his career. You know, I mean, he happens to be, say, an alumni, but it could also be, it's not necessarily all alumni stories, right? It could be someone in their final year or talking about their first year. I feel I've achieved a lot. Quote, you know, real pictures, not just Photoshop or, you know, some amazing things. Thinking outside the box, clear call to action. And you've also got, I mean, and it's obviously, you know, it's responsive. If you're looking at exploring your future, so beyond all of those people stories, if you want that career, you're not thinking about, I want to study fundamentals of whatever, you may be at this level, you know. So what does that look like? And really allowing it to explore, because as you know, traditional university style. So this actually links to the university, but we also, this helped the university to prioritize changing certain landing pages, because as you know, university web pages are massive. So there's actual, you know, videos, there's less heavy word, you know, kind of content. Explore these things, 360 of the facilities, not just, you know, which pages should we update and why. And always, you know, with, you know, just a simplified website, basically. So I'm just gonna bring it back. Keep doing it. Thanks, everyone. Any questions? And any questions online? Okay.
I think we have time for maybe a couple of questions.
Yeah, maybe a couple of questions, then feel free to stay and network. So, yes.
All right, thank you. So your objective of the entire design was the landing page, right? So, for example, if it was just a particular campaign, like let's suppose their semester is starting, they're opening their admissions and they wanted to reach out, right? So, did you have any difficulty with their branding guidelines, or did you feel it was too off? Like a landing page can actually be completely different than their old website. So how challenging was that?
So you still, obviously there are the constraints and you need to adhere to the guidelines, but again, I guess to be clear, we were creating something new and there was clarity from the start from all teams that this is a new touch point, new medium. And like you saw with those, you know, the Parallax websites, that was their vision of what success looked like. And there was another website, which unfortunately is offline, but had human stories. So the framework or the idea was quite clear. To answer your first question, yes, the output was the site, which you just saw, but like you saw in the beginning, and especially as a consultant, the idea is lifetime clients or long-term clients. And how we do that is by going beyond the campaign and potentially creating work for the future. But yes, typically there's a deliverable, which was delivered, but a lot of what you saw showcased our expertise as an agency, and you know, other work came out.
I see, thank you. I do have another question.
Sure.
You were talking about how, you know, there's a lot of time that goes into educating the client, right? And it may sound silly, but I don't find any questions stupid. So
No,
I'm just gonna go for it. During that entire process, let's suppose, I mean, the design team was interacting with them either before they became your client. So did you actually bill them for educating them, or how does that work?
So I mean, typically there's a pitch, right? There's a lot of pre-work that is not typically billed, probably should, but isn't. It's business development. And that was my role too. Not some of the rest of the team, but with the GM, who you didn't see here. Yes, there's a lot of work in, you know, you have events, you have speakers coming in, there's, you know, other work you've done, and then you would create a deck pitching what you understood is their problem and how you're going to solve it. And obviously there's a very expensive price tag at the end of that. Sorry?
That covers up.
That covers?
That covers up for the show.
Yeah. Does that make sense? But the I mean, usually the education is happening in tandem. If you're running a workshop, part of the workshop is some of the slides what you saw today. I took this from some of the work. So at the start, it's why are we doing this? What's the value? What's this connected to? It's not just, hey, let's just do it because it's fun, because we think you'll imagine the future. But what are we going to get? And the whole thing needs to be tied, and they need to understand. And yes, there are some people, myself was the role, and a few others, that's your job, to do that liaison with the client, making sure, hey, how was it? Do you have any feedback? Are you happy? You know, all of important to do. That happens being behind the scenes. Any other questions? Anything online?
Since you just presented to us the Designled marketing, buddy, what would you would you remove something to make it more lean in terms of process, right? Or would you add something else to make it more either rigid or more efficient?
Great question. So yes, as a consultant, we often add some padding and do lots of stuff because we're selling our services. And the answer to your question is the classic design answer. It depends. Like anything we do in design, I'm a big believer in lean and agile, and we should only do as much as we need to get to the next stage. Don't do something for the sake of it. Be ruthless with yourself, not just with design, but in everything we do in life. Do we have enough to go on to the next stage? Okay, none. That's why I love design sprints. They're not relevant for everything, but they're great. And look, sometimes it depends on your audience. So some of these activities, yeah, potentially I would drop, but if the activity is serving a purpose of educating the audience and aligning the audience, which is always a hard in-house or client, or like, let's just make sure we're all on the same page, then that's value and that's important. You know, the expectation mapping, I think many people like, yeah, potentially, you know, you could do that exercise in a leaner way, but for this audience, it served the purpose because they'd never done this before. We had two different teams. There was conflict. We needed to get that alignment. We needed to create these personas. They had older personas, but for the campaign, these are not maybe current state personas, but these are personas of the ideal future state. So if you're client side and you've got all of that knowledge in-house, maybe you can drop it. But again, I think it depends on which things have you done before. Do you have journey maps? If you've got detailed journey maps, don't reinvent the wheel. If those journey maps are based on data, or data, as my colleague always likes to say, then use them. You don't have to do a whole day. Or use them as a starting point. Any questions online? Final question. I know we're kind of maybe out of time. Thanks everyone. Hope you find it useful. The video, I think, yeah, will be shared, and happy to share the slides, of course.